Ladies and gentlemen, I am Corione, your witch in residence. And today we're going to finish off our series on queer movies you might not have tried. So, the idea of this series is I'm going to talk about movies that are released for the queer community, but are approachable really to anyone. They're universal stories that happen to have coded queer characters. And I think they're universally approachable. I think they're a lot of fun. And I've saved, in my opinion, one of the best for last, which is But I'm a Cheerleader. Now, before we get too deep into it, I just want to say thank you all to my channel members. If you have not yet joined, please consider subscribing to the channel. It means a lot. Or even better, become a channel member. You get exclusive perks, including a say in how this channel is run, as well as access to the back episodes of the Rogue Council, our big, conspiracy woo woo show that allows you guys to get a lot of cool information, ask questions, and we go deep. When we talked about Waco, we had an actual Waco experiencer on. We've had people who have in depth knowledge about all of these topics. It's really worth checking out, but the free version is only up for 72 hours. Then it's only available to our members. So please consider checking out the channel. It really helps. Thank you. Now, with that obligatory ritual out of the way, let's talk about But I'm a Cheerleader. Now, But I'm a Cheerleader starts out with our main character who is a cheerleader. She's a nice girl. She doesn't really have a boyfriend. She just hasn't found the right guy yet. And she comes home one day after cheer practice, and her parents inform her that they understand she's a lesbian and they're taking her to a facility to help her. Now, she doesn't think she's a lesbian at all, but over the course of the conversion therapy she's going through, she falls in love. And she falls in love with her perfect opposite. Where she's bubbly and happy, this one is dark and, a little sarcastic. Where she is full of being an extrovert, this one's an introvert. And she has trouble acknowledging that she could actually love this girl. And it takes sitting down with some very, very famous people that happen to be in this movie to realize how much she cares and how much she loves this person. But this person, in order to inherit her family's wealth, decides to be a good girl and marry a good Christian boy and leaves her in a very, very difficult place. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you because it makes me cry every time. I love this movie. It's so heart wrenching and so beautiful with some amazingly funny parts. If you are not laughing at the male camp counselors in this movie, I don't think you're watching it right because it is just hysterical, their antics. Um, and the idea of some of the other characters is just too ridiculous to ignore. It's a lot of fun, but it does tackle some very serious issues about young love and young romance and what it means to fall in love and what it means to care about somebody and how far you'd be willing to go. And how often have we seen on screen the girl falls for guy that wasn't right for her, or guy falls for girl that is from the other side of the tracks, or is the girl that his mom would have warned him about. These are timeless stories of perfectly mismatched couples and their courtship and their learning to get together. This is just dressed up in a very amusing, very almost Barbie aesthetic way with lots of bubblegum and craziness. And there are a lot of free clips of this online, so you can check it out a little bit before you dig into it. I really like it. I really like what it says about relationships. And what it really says is this, which is, I think, the piece that gets forgotten the most often is that the differences between queer relationships and a heterosexual relationship are not that different, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We all have the same insecurities. We all deal with the same weirdness in our life. The difference is there's an added level of awkwardness here that's played for humor in a great deal, and that's what makes it fun. This is the kind of movie that, I can sit down and watch by myself or with my girlfriend or with the wife or whoever. Um, but I've also caught many of my female friends grabbing a glass of wine and sitting down together and watching it and laughing at. It's it's a fun movie, but it talks about a very serious issue, and it uses comedy to approach that difficult part of relationships. The where falling in love and falling in lust potentially is easy, but making a relationship work, being there for the other person, being that person's support, that's hard, and that's universal. How often have we each heard stories about somebody who fell in love with somebody and they thought things were great, and it turned out they were just really wrong for them? How often have we heard stories of people getting together with somebody and it turns out after a while they're not the person they thought they were? Heck, I live in Toronto, where we have, an abusive relationship with our hockey team. So I've seen these relationships before, and I feel like this is the perfect movie to watch if you want to see what a genuinely honest young love story is, taken to its dramatic teenage levels, with a good amount of humor, um, a good amount of camaraderie, and a good amount of respect for everybody involved, regardless of what their identity or how they choose to announce themselves to the world is. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a beautiful story. And I really recommend that you check it out, because these are the stories that help bring us together as people, okay? If we only read stories about our own culture's mythology, or we read stories about only our modern pop culture, right? If you only read Superman stories, you are missing out on a vast world of comic books. If you only watch Star Trek, you are missing out on potentially other genres that could intrigue you that you simply may not have found the right story for. This, to me, is the first romance story that really called out to me. It really spoke to me on a lot of different levels. And the fun part is, there is no male lead for me to be called out to and said, oh, well, is she going to wind up with this guy? It wasn't about that. It was about being taken along for the ride on this most unlikely of love stories, that no one ever thought these two girls were going to be the ones to get together. And the world is made a lot brighter for the relationship, and much darker when the darker patches hit. So I think this is worth checking out. I think that, given that this is the last week of Pride for this year, the parades are happening, the marches are happening. It's a wonderful party here in Toronto. Thankfully, my arcane sanctum is fairly soundproofed. Otherwise, you would hear the throngs of celebrating people outside, and this entire room would be alight in rainbows, the likes of which you've never seen. But it would also mean that a lot of people are celebrating the love of their life and celebrating how they wish to live. And I am grateful I get to live in a place where that happens. As some of you know, I've in the past raised money for the Rainbow Railroad, which gets people who are queer in places where you can be killed for that, to safe places in North America and Europe. And I feel that this is something that's near and dear to my heart because, all I could imagine is somebody's daughter or somebody's son not being allowed to grow up because they loved somebody that society didn't think was okay. And that's why we need pride. And that's why we need to examine other culture stories, because when we do, we demystify that culture. Okay. We take away the scariness of it because we realize how close it is to our own. Okay. I have studied the mythologies of at least 15 different ancient cultures that I can think of off the top of my head. And you know what I learned about all of them? All of them were afraid of the same things, forces that they couldn't control, natural disasters that somehow were the result of displeased deity, and gods that attempted to trick people into learning their lesson. And I see that over and over and again. And what I also see is people who deeply fell in love, married, had a bunch of kids, who got to live their own stories. And sometimes even they didn't have their own kids, they adopted in kids. And I think looking at queer movies and queer culture helps us demystify queer culture and queer movies so that we can realize that they're just like us. At the end of the day, they want to come home, curl up with their partner, watch TV, order some takeout, and generally enjoy each other's company. Because it's not all about the plumbing and the mechanics. It's about being able to come home to that partner, snuggle in, tell them you love them, hear it back, and enjoy your time together. That's ultimately what it should be about. And so long as everyone is being respectful to other people's comfort levels, so long as people are being, respectful to what other people want to have in their face, I think we can build a world together where everybody can learn to get along. There is a Canadian Prime Minister who very correctly said the words, "The Canadian government is unconcerned about what consenting adults do in their bedroom." And I think that is a wonderful position to have. And so long as we keep to a live and let live philosophy, I think we can all live and all be together and learn to work together for the betterment of all of us. Because what brings us together is far closer than what separates us. And at the end of the day, so long as we're all operating from a position of love and kindness and respect, I think we can all work together, even if you're a cheerleader. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.